Those of you that have been looking at my channel for a while will know that when I first came on YouTube, my idea was to share some of my favourite music with you. Put some tracks on that you might not have heard before, and hopefully enlighten a few of you to some fantastic music that's still available. Unfortunately, with the situation now with WMG and UMG, it's virtually impossible to put anything on with any certainty of it staying on. And I'm just going to do the other option, which is to tell you about 10 indispensable albums that I couldn't have lived without with for the last 30-40 years. And I think I've had tracks from all of these albums blocked recently, so here it goes. Now, the first one is Traffic's second album, which was released in 1968. Fantastic album, psychedelic pop if you like, some fantastic tracks on it, some of them quite well known. 40,000 Headmen, Vagabond Virgin with Dave Mason, Steve Winwood, Chris Wood and Jim Capaldi. I think it's slightly better than their first album, Dear Mr. Fantasy, and I don't think they did anything as good afterwards. The second album is Deep Purple in Rock. Which was, I think, their third or fourth album, but the first one with Ian Gillan. I remember hearing it from the first time and being absolutely bowled over. Obviously the lengthy track Child in Time comes from this album, as does Speed King, which I believe opens the album, with Richie Blackmore going absolutely mental on his Stratocaster, and had a big effect on me, that album. Fantastic stuff, wouldn't be without it. I actually had a track of this album blocked last week, so don't go there. The third one is War Babies by Daryl Hall and John Oates. Now, a lot of people would consider Hall and Oates to be a blue-eyed soul band, but actually War Babies was produced by Todd Rundgren, who played guitar throughout, and it really is an outstanding album. Very rocky. The last track on it, which is Johnny Gore and the Sea Eaters, Rundgren plays some absolutely unbelievable guitar on that, but the whole album is well worth listening to, so that would be one of my top 10. That's War Babies by Hall and Oates. Next up is Tim Buckley. Now, where do you start with Tim? He made some fantastic albums throughout his short career, and I suppose I'd choose Goodbye and Hello. Which was, I think, 1967. A lot of the tracks from this album have been featured in quite a few Vietnam-based movies. Probably the best known track is Once I Was, which, as some of you may remember, was one of my top 5 songs of all time. Tim Buckley was brought to my attention by my old friend Lenny, who actually introduced me to Hall and Oates as well, and I do owe him a big debt of gratitude for that. Fantastic album. That's Hello and Goodbye, or Goodbye and Hello I should say, from Tim Buckley. Now, the first band I ever saw live in 1968 was Spooky Tooth, and I was already a big fan of the Small Faces, so when I heard that Greg Ridley had left Spooky Tooth to join up with Steve Marriott, I was quite excited, and I had a sort of an idea of what they'd sound like together. And their first album, their debut album, As Safe as Yesterday Is, didn't disappoint. A fantastic mix of both bands, with Greg's fantastic bass playing right the way throughout, Marriott's impassioned vocals, some fantastic tracks on it, including the title track, and a great cover of Steppenwolf, Desperation. So that's As Safe as Yesterday Is by Humble Pie. Now, another label that you mustn't go near is Geffen, or part of Warner Brothers Group, and the Eagles have always been one of my favourite bands. And I've chosen Inside Job by Don Henley. His last solo album, I believe, in 2001. It's a really good album. Plenty of Don's fantastic songwriting talent on display here. Some of it a little bit political, as most of you probably know. He's a keen ecologist. There's a fantastic track called Goodbye to a River, which bemoans the well, the way that pollution is being put into our rivers on a daily basis. But it's not all doom and gloom. There's some pretty up tracks on it as well. That's Don Henley, Inside Job. Now the next one, I'm not even going to show you the cover, because this guy is absolute YouTube poison. Van Morrison and Astral Weeks. Fantastic album from 1967, or it may have been 68, I can't quite remember. I think most old hippies like me have got it in their record collection somewhere. But I remember this from 68, 69, some very happy memories. Madam George, Ballerina, beautiful album, slightly jazzy, folky jazz, but well worth listening to if you've not heard it. But don't put any of his music on YouTube. Account closed. Now the Small Faces were probably the band that made me what I am today. When I was 12 years old, I saw them on the TV and I thought, I want to be like that. Fantastic sense of fashion, fantastic music. Probably best known for Ogden's Nut Gone Flake, which came out in 68, but their first album in 65 was an absolute stonking mix of R&B, soul, rock. Jimmy Page obviously listened to this album quite a lot, because if you listen to it, you can hear a lot of early Led Zeppelin riffs in this album. Absolutely fantastic. Very raw live sound. That's I think it was called In the Beginning, but there's no actual title on the album, but that's the Small Faces debut album, 1965. Fantastic. Moving on from the Small Faces, Jimmy Page again, and Led Zeppelin 1. Now I remember hearing this album for the first time in 68. I used to go to a youth club not far from my home, and I often played records on the little twin decks there, and annoyed the local skinheads, because there was about 20 of them and 3 or 4 of us hippie types. And I used to put Led Zeppelin 1 on and really piss them off. And Dazed and Confused, the first time I heard it, just completely blew my mind. I mean, how can you sum it up? It's just a fantastic, brilliant album. Led Zeppelin 1. I mean, I don't need to tell you about that, do I? You know that already. And finally, before you all go to sleep on me, I've always liked a little bit of folk music. Bert Yance, Fotheringay, and later, or these days, Bob Thiel, that sort of thing. But the first band that really caught my imagination was Fairport Convention, and I'm going back before the days of Dave Swarbrick and his twiddly-dee fiddle playing, to their second album, which was called What We Did on Our Holidays. You had Sandy Denny and Ian Matthews on vocals, Richard Thompson on lead guitar, Dave Maddox on bass, Ashley Hutchins on, did I say bass? Dave Maddox on drums, Ashley Hutchins on bass, and Simon Nicol on rhythm guitar. And they were, I think unfairly in the press, likened to Jefferson Airplane. They were called the English Jefferson Airplane, and I don't think they sounded anything like them. They were unique, brilliant band, and I only wish Sandy had stayed with them a bit longer. Having said that, she formed Fotheringay with Trevor Lucas, who were another fantastic band. But there you go. So that's not necessarily my top 10 indispensable albums, but there's certainly 10 that I wouldn't want to be without. I hope you have a look at some of them, have a listen and see what you think. Alright, and I'll catch you soon. Hopefully.